Lions got the wins in them, going back to back. This is the Hindsight 20 podcast. It is back-to-back wins for our beloved Detroit Lions. I want to thank each and every one of you for listening. I am your host, Jerry Mallory of the Detroit Sports Podcast. What's going on, guys? Yes, it's 6-9. The season, there's no implications of playing after next week, but it's another win. And the second half of the season now, no matter what happens in Soldier Field in Chicago, we can say the second half was a success. We know though, okay? We're not blind. 1-7 was abysmal. And this is why we are in the position and predicament that we are. But a win is a win is a win. And we're here to talk about it. Let's set the table, some of the things we're going to talk about, not just the win as a whole, but the 5-22-5 theory. It isn't some complicated thing. It isn't something that scientists have come up with, but I have my own theorem. Pythagoras has his theorem. Jerry Mallory has his theorem. It's the 5-22-5 theorem. I will tell you about that, and I will tell you what these last 2 weeks has meant for the Lions, because they fall into this formula some type of way. We'll be talking about Matthew Stafford, listening to a couple of clips from him. Theo Riddick, of course, with a record-breaking game. It's time to talk money for this guy. We talk about a lot of guys and a lot of situations. We'll break down some figures, what he's making, what he compares to in terms of his skill set, guys in that type of skill set frame, how much they make, and how it relates to some guys currently on this roster. So we'll be talking about Theo Riddick. We've got some really good questions. We're going to sit down and spend a good chunk of time for the second half of the show getting to the questions. It's going to be story time again. I've got something for you. I don't want to give it away, but a little bit of an interesting day for Jerry. I'm usually at every game. Did not make this one. I will tell you what happened. We'll talk about the Chicago Bears, and we'll have general fun, okay? It's always good to get the win, and so now we are at 6-9. So I didn't see the entirety of the game live. I'm either watching the game or I am there at the game. I'm not going to tell you what happened until story time, but doing a little bit of catch up. But yes, the game was a good one. I mean, first half, I will say defensively, I was a little bit disappointed. We had Blaine Gabbert out there looking like anybody other than Blaine Gabbert or Colin Kaepernick. And they were moving the ball well, but specifically they were running. And our run defense has been up and down. It's shown sometimes, where it's been solid, but there is a time or two where we have let running backs get the best of us. So you're looking at this game and you're saying, now come on. We can't let Jared Haynes and all these no-name bums off the street do what Todd Gurley did against us, who pretty much on offense single-handedly beat us. Or Adrian Peterson, the game here at Ford Field. We had the lead, we blew it, and Adrian did his thing. It was looking like that, but come second half, the defense shut them out. The defense played as good as they should have, especially against the San Francisco 49ers and this horrible offense. So I'm proud of the team overall. They're fighting, and I'm starting to realize or think, can't say realize because we know nothing definitively. I'm starting to think that it was a hangover. You lose in dramatic, depressing fashion against Green Bay, and the following week was a bit of a hangover. The Rams are starting to look better. They got some more wins under their belt, but we just looked really bad more than they looked good. So I'm starting to think that, yes, it was a bit of a hangover against the Rams because of the Green Bay Hail Mary. These last 2 weeks, not world burner teams, but again, these are NFL quality teams. This is something that Stafford kind of mentioned. It's the NFL, and you're going up against whoever it is. You have the opportunity to win or lose any week. Just ask the Carolina Panthers. So let's talk about Matt Stafford. He's looking really good in the second half. Yes, the schedule has eased up. He's not facing Arizona's and Seattle's, and he's not facing Minnesota's. But it's a combination of him playing better, the offensive line playing better, the schedule being easier, and yes, one Jim Bob Cooter installing an offense that's really fitting, not just Stafford, but all of the accompanying players. It's a big formula. But the formula exists with any player, okay? At the end of the year, this is when we look at guys' stats. And so we see Andy Dalton. He's having a good year. Carson Palmer. I'm not about to give you anything groundbreaking. Even the best players, they get a chance to pad their stats against the better teams, against good defenses. They'll struggle a little bit more than usual. So, it's all a part of the equation. Right now, he's on track to have a pretty decent season, especially in the second half. Let's take a listen as Stafford talks about the win as a whole and how it kind of pertains to Jim Caldwell. Jim Caldwell is not giving up. He's not throwing in the towel. He's still giving a maximum effort, as is the team. And so this is what Stafford had to say about that.
It means a lot. This is NFL football. You show up on Sunday, you got to play well. And, we're no different than everybody else. We're going out there trying to win football games. For the guys playing next to us, to our coaching staff, to everybody. This is an organization that means a lot to me and a lot of people that wear this uniform. So you got to put your best foot forward every week, and that's everybody. And our head coach is definitely doing that.
Exactly. Kind of echoing the sentiments. It's NFL football. You have the ability of winning or losing against anyone. You can only face who's in front of you. And so, yes, the asterisk when you score big points against bad teams and bad defenses is there. I don't buy into it as much because this team has showed the ability to hang with and beat good teams like Green Bay and, the down to the wire game against Seattle. But we also look bad against some disappointing teams like the Rams. So I'm taking the win. I'm happy with it. I'm not complaining about it. And it's the NFL. So let's listen to the next clip. He briefly talks about Jim Bob Cooter. Again, it's one of those little buzzwords. When I talked about Stafford before and how he kind of, props up Jim Bob, I think it's a slight diss, if you will. We just played that diss track from Drake back to back. It's like a little mini diss track, in my opinion, that Stafford gives out when he's giving props to Jim Bob. A little bit of a slight to Mr. Joe Lombardi. But let's listen to that clip as he talks about the differences, not just with himself, but with the team as a whole, now that Jim Bob Cooter is the OC.
I think he's a smart guy. He's doing a good job of trying to create matchups. We're getting the ball out quick sometimes. We're holding it other times. It's kind of tough to get a beat on us on what we're trying to do. Did a good job today, just taking what the defense gave us. Didn't get too aggressive in spots. Tried to hold it a couple times. It didn't work out. Tried to get the ball down the field, but guys underneath are doing a great job of catching and running. Ebron did a great job of that today. GT did a good job of that today, and our backs. So he's just mixing it up, multiple. Trying to keep the defense on their heels. We went up tempo a couple times this game to try and push the tempo on these guys and dictate a little bit, and I thought we did okay.
So there's the slight diss. He has time and time again mentioned how Jim Bob Cooter's a smart guy. And he is. But I think when he says that, it's a differential between Jim Bob and Lombardi. Remember, the rumor is, and we don't know if it's true or not, that Joe Lombardi kind of questioned the intelligence and the ability to, and from a football standpoint, of Matt Stafford, questioning his intelligence, understanding, picking up things, making things work out in his scheme. Well, sometimes there's a bit of intelligence, a bit of smartness. There is an art to explaining things in a simple manner. Things can be effective, yet understandable. It doesn't have to be overly complicated. And sometimes the smartest individuals make things sound so easy and straightforward where other people can understand it. There's a difference between having knowledge and being a teacher. Coaches have to be that. Just not having football knowledge, but being able to translate it. And so far, this is where Jim Bob Cooter is kind of excelling. And I think when he talks about Jim Bob, one of the first things Stafford always says is that he's a smart guy. I think it's a slight diss. I could be wrong, but a slight diss to Mr. Lombardi, who questioned the intelligence of Stafford previously. Now, we've got a game left, but the second half has been so much better. At this point, Stafford, it's an 8-to-1 ratio touchdown to interceptions, which is just exceptional. I don't care, who you're facing on defense. The stats look good, and he's had a couple of decent teams that he's gone up against. I'm not going to lie though. The vast majority of the teams in the second half has been teams that have struggled. on the defensive side, specifically pass defense. This is why next week I'm looking forward to seeing, because believe it or not, the Chicago Bears are one of the best pass defense teams in the league. They've made some drastic improvements. They were one of the worst teams defensively last year. Their pass D is getting better. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Stafford in this last game on the road, division rival, against a really good pass D. And if they look good next week and he builds on that 16 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, maybe he throws 2 touchdowns and no picks, or 3 touchdowns and 1 pick. I'll say, it's not just the easy cake lineup, but yes, the offensive line looking better, and Jim Bob Cooter, and Stafford, and the whole team clicking. I'll buy into that narrative even more next week, because we'll be facing probably the best pass D since Minnesota, but really since Denver, though. Denver's number 1 in the league in pass D, and I don't have things in front of me in terms of how everyone else ranked our opponents. But this is one of the best pass defenses that we're going to face in quite some time. Certainly the best, I'm going to say, since the bye week, which is right there, smack dab in the middle. So this win, and I'll leave with one nitpick of a remark, which I like to do. Golden Tate, end of the first half, get out of bounds. I know he got some extra yards. If we got a penalty on that play, if it was a false start instead of an offsides on that defense, it would have been a 10-second runoff. And we don't have timeouts. And so we had to rush, and Tate did get a few yards, go out of bounds next time. That's my nitpick remark. Now, this game falls into my 5-22-5 theory. I have a theory, and it goes as follows. In the NFL, you got 32 teams, and it's up in the air each and every year, with the exception of a few things. It's 5-22-5. Pretty much, there are 5 bottom feeders, garbage dwellers. There are 22 teams in the middle of that, and then there are 5 teams that are always going to be there, contending for supremacy in their conference, and they're always going to kind of be there in terms of contending for a Super Bowl. Now, this fluctuates. The NFL changes so much year after year, but looking at the Detroit Lions, I'm thankful to say, after this win, that we're in that 22 category. We're with the rest of the league. The beauty of that 22 is they have the ability each and every year, if they make enough moves, to contend for a playoff, for a division. Some of them even with the ability to contend all the way to a Super Bowl. Do I think the Lions can do that next year? No. But looking at the way they've played, 6-10 or 7-9, we're going to end the second half with 5 or 6 wins out of 8, which is really good. I think we definitely fall into that 22 category, which means with a few changes, with a few additions, a few subtractions, spend a little money, draft well, we're right there next year, contending for the division and maybe even more. But I will say, at the very least, contending for a wild card spot, which is pretty good, because at 1-7, we were really looking like one of those 5 bottom feeder teams. Now, I'm not going to break down all 32 teams in the league. What I am going to do at this time, though, is give you the top 5 and the bottom 5. I've got the 5 bottom feeders and the 5 elite teams. And, the 5-22-5 thing, it doesn't last long because so much can change. This is pretty much halfway through the year. I started to look at these bottom feeder teams. It's like, you know what? There isn't much they can do next year to even really contend for much. Maybe a wild card at the best, but it would take so much because they're dumpster fire bottom feeder teams. Then there's the 22. Out of that 22, it depends on kind of what they do, the changes they make, bring in the right quarterback, bring in the right coach. And then the top 5, these 5 guys, they pretty much each and every year are contending. And I make this decision about halfway through the year, kind of looking and seeing, specifically where the Lions fall, but how other teams fall. And in order to get in that top 5 or in the bottom 5, it has to be a little bit of longevity, at least 2 seasons where your team has looked really bad or really good. So a team like Carolina, although they are 14-1, looking great, they're not in my top echelon elite teams because, yes, they won their division last year, but it was with a poor record. And so they're right there on the cusp. But so when I read this off and you hear that they don't make it, that's why it has to be at least a couple of years of futility, which is why a team like the Baltimore Ravens won't be in my bottom 5 because this is the first year that they've really been bad. Now, all that being said, this year, I tried to look at 5 bottom feeder teams. I only have 4. I only have 4 teams that, for my money, there isn't much they can do to change being like an 8-8 team at best next year. They had to make so many improvements, bring in so many people. Just everything would have to go so perfectly for them to achieve more than that, to like make noise and not even, go to the playoffs, but to like win a playoff game. And so my bottom feeder of my 5-22-5 theory are as follows: the Tennessee Titans, the Cleveland Browns, Jacksonville Jaguars, and yes, the San Francisco 49ers. Now, the Niners have a couple of quality wins. Really, the worst of those three is Tennessee, Jacksonville, Cleveland. I just feel like there's a lot of changes that would need to be made in order for them to excel. If I'm getting nitpicky and technical, Jacksonville, I do like Blake Bortles, and I like TJ Yeldon, so you never know with a quarterback, that improves. And what's that guy? Allen Robinson looks good. But I just feel like these teams, at best, their ceiling next year, their absolute ceiling would be like 8-8, which is, maybe a wild card, maybe if their division is having an off year. But that's really bottom feeder. Really no chance of making noise. Again, I'm putting the Lions in that other 22. We have a legitimate shot if we make the right changes and a few things fall our way to, yes, contend for a wild card spot, but even contend for our division. Our top five this year, I've only got 4 because, you look at a team like Baltimore, who I really would want to put in there. They've kind of fallen off. Arizona, Carolina, Cincinnati, all good teams. But this top echelon, these top 5, these are guys and teams that have like been to Super Bowls and or have won Super Bowls or have been to like multiple championship rounds in their respective conference. These teams are good, Arizona, Cincinnati, Carolina, but they haven't got to that point yet. They haven't got to that echelon. And so they're right there. But my top 5, it's actually only 4. I know I cheated again, but it's New England, Green Bay, Seattle, Denver. I mean, there's no really surprises here. It's just how I look at things and how I kind of rationalize what my team specifically, it always falls back to the Lions for me, what my team needs to do. If we're in that bottom 5 of that 5-22-5, it's like, hey, rebuild. You're going to be cutting a lot of high-priced guys. But when you fall in that 22, you're retooling a little bit more than you're rebuilding because you have an opportunity to kind of shift things and turn things around. And you've shown some promise in your season. You have some amount of young, decent, talented players. And this is where the Lions fall now. So, it's good to be in there. After 1-7, it was looking more like, oh no, we're one of those bottom feeders because we've been there. You know what I mean? We've been there too much as Lions fans. It's like, no, here it is. It's coming. It's happening again. And so it's good to, instead of being a part of that narrative, be a part of the narrative when teams are looking at us as competition at their schedule. Lions are going to be tough this year. When free agents are considering us, Lions finished strong last year. Coaches, GM, there's some talent. They did some good things. They fought through. They won 6 or 7 games. You know what I mean? They had a really strong second half. And yes, this allows us to fall into that 22 range. It's not the best. To get to 5, it takes so much to be in that top 5, but at least we're not in the bottom 5. Let's talk about Theo Riddick before we go to break. Record-breaking, most yardage for a wide receiver for the Detroit Lions. For running back, most receiving yardage for a running back. It's really cool. We're going to play a sound clip of Theo Riddick at this point, and then we'll have a little bit of discussion. Like I said, contract and things we're going to talk about, but we might hold that off for a little bit later. It depends on how I'm feeling. I'm going to play this sound clip with you, and we will do the full Theo Riddick bit and segment, or we'll break it up into 2 parts. Either way, here's Theo Riddick talking about, his level of importance. He likes the record, but, he's going to talk to us and tell us a little bit of where his mind is at and what his goals are as a player.
Yeah, for sure. He's obviously looking for me, and, I'm able to make a few guys miss and get a little bit of separation in routes, so it definitely helps.
I feel like defenses are paying more attention to you now than they were earlier in the season.
Yeah, for sure. I think, obviously I've been kind of consistent, so, they've been doing a lot of different things and making it a challenge every Sunday.
You set the franchise record for most receiving yards in the season. What is something like that?
It means a lot, man. You obviously work your behind off in the off season to achieve things like that, and obviously victories as well. But overall, it's a huge accomplishment. But I'll take a W any night over record-breaking things. It's not who I am.
He's saying the right things. You hope he really feels that way. The record is good, but he wants to get wins. He wants to get those W's. But now, it was really funny. One of the bigger understatements, I'll say, he says he has the ability to make a guy or two miss. That's putting it mildly. Now, when Theo Riddick was at Notre Dame, he had some shiftiness. He looked good. He looked decent. Notre Dame often playing Big Ten teams, so I did get a chance to see Theo Riddick play college ball a time or two. But his ability to make guys miss it's been phenomenal, okay? It's been absolutely phenomenal. He's one of the best in the league at what he does. And so now it's time to start talking money for this guy. It doesn't have to be a ton. He's a running back, and he's really a specialty player, but it is time to start talking money. And let's discuss that before we go to break. Now, Theo Riddick this year makes $697,000. So $700K roughly this year, and then next year he's due to make that as well. It's time to talk contract extension, though. We can very well sign him to a long-term deal next year, 2 to 3 years. And I think it's important that we do that. We lock him down now because I think another year, and if he had a chance to kind of hit free agency and kind of show some things, the price tag would go up. So how much is he worth? I mean, he's a specialty player. He's one of the best at it, in terms of receiving running backs. Well, let's look at two guys that are kind of known as being specialty players, what they're making, and just to kind of give us a barometer, a decent range in terms of what we need to pay to keep Theo Riddick aboard here in Detroit. So two guys I looked at was Darren Sproles and Danny Woodhead. So Darren Sproles makes $4 million upcoming this season annually. That's the price range you're going to get for a running back like that. Danny Woodhead makes $3 million. So you're looking anywhere between $3 to $4 million. Inflation always applies. Contracts and salary caps go up. So, $4 to $5 million. I mean, I know it sounds a little steep, but this guy, he's doing a lot for this team. Now, here's how you kind of can make this happen. You may be sitting there, the new Lions GM. We love the story. Wayne State. They love to say it on Fox. They love to say it on Monday Night Football. Hey, we just rode past Wayne State University where Joyke Bell played. He was a security guard for, I don't know whose voice I'm doing. I'm just like doing random dudes' voices. He was a security guard for the Lions. We get that. Cool story. I actually went to school at the same time as Joyke Bell, had some classes with him. Good guy. But here's how you might be able to spend that money on Theo Riddick. It might be decision time. Am I keeping Theo or am I cutting Joyke? See, Joyke Bell's due to make $3.5 million. You cut him, you save some room. It will increase your odds of re-signing Theo Riddick. And I'm thinking about $4 to $4.5 million. And I love Joyke, but I would do it. That means cutting Joyke, bring him back at less. Or, if you cut him, you have the risk of him going to another team. Either way, I mean, Theo brings more to the table, and it's a business. And so that's just kind of where we're at. He ain't making a ton of money right now. It's only $700,000, but he's going to get paid a little bit more. He's going to up, his paycheck, his dividends. The $4 million range is about where some of these guys are going, and I think the $4 million range is about where Theo Riddick is about to get broke off. All right, guys, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got some good questions. We got some story time to give you. I got a quick take on a Pro Bowl snub. We know who I'm going to talk about, and then we will talk about the Chicago Bears. Soldier Field, it's the battle of 6 and 9 teams. It's a battle of one's going to get a worse draft pick. It's a division rival. Stay right here on the Hindsight 20 podcast. We'll be back in just a brief moment. Jerry Mallory here, Hindsight 20 podcast. It's simple, guys. Your ad can be placed right here on the show, Hindsight 20 podcast@gmail.com. The Detroit Sports Podcast, it's premier, and we only support the best companies. And, if we're supporting what you do, your brand, it could be a bar, it could be, you could have a car dealership, you could, do whatever it is. if we're supporting it, we're not just going to pick you up because you like us. We're going to look at it. We're going to see if you fit our brand. And if you do, that means you're a solid company. Those that listen to us, they trust us. They know we want to support those that are quality companies, and watch them come in flocks. Watch them come in droves. It's hindsight20podcast@gmail.com. Let's do a little bit of business. Let's have an opportunity for you to get your promotion and your business out there, and it gives us an opportunity to keep the lights on. You know how it goes. It's simple. What we do in the podcast universe, we love it. It is not free. It takes a little money. It takes a little time and effort. And your ad and your business will allow us to keep doing that. Again, hindsight20podcast@gmail.com. Let's make it happen. We are back on the Hindsight 20. It's always a better day when it's a win, okay? I don't care what part of the season it is. I don't care what team you faced. You love it. So after the Green Bay game, I swore off the Lions, man. Seriously, I'm like, you know what? We got one more game against San Francisco. And yes, it's story time. So gather around the campfire, gather around the fireplace. You got your milk and whatever you do as you listen to the smooth tones of Jerry Mallory with his story. After the Green Bay game, I'm like, you know what? I'll see you guys in April. I'm not going to the last game. I'm done. It took too much out of me. You know, it sucked the life out of me. I can't do it. I'm done. You know, I can't go to Ford Field anymore. I can't sit there and listen to Gridiron and all these guys. I can't do it. I couldn't do it. Like I totally did that mentally, you know, at least going to Ford Field. Well, you know, a couple of weeks later, a few wins, and, you know, after the emotional part of it is all said and done, I'm like, hey, I am looking forward to this game. It's the last game of the year. First year with season tickets. I've had a great time going to the game, primarily with my lovely wife. Got to catch a game with my dad. You know, it's an opportunity for us to go 4-4 at home, which is respectable. And so I'm looking forward to the game. Now, it's a cautionary tale in this story. It doesn't end well. And it's why I missed a good portion of the game. It's why I was not able to even attend the game. I missed a good portion in terms of watching on TV, and I did not go to the game at all. Listen to far too much of it on the radio. No disrespect. You know, we love what Dan Miller and those guys do, but I watch it on TV as well. And that's what I normally do if I'm not there. So in an effort to save a couple of dollars, a couple of bucks, I had a long weekend, okay? My wife had a friend come from out of town. We toured all of Metro Detroit up. Seriously, we were all over the place, having a good time. But it costs money to have a good time. You know what I mean? So here I am Sunday, and I have a usual spot where I go when I park, and it's $10. Not a big deal. But I'm like, you know what? I want to save a little money. I know if I drive around a little bit, if you're from Detroit, if you've been to Ford Field, you kind of know if you drive around a little bit, you can find a free spot. You don't have to walk a little bit further. It's nice outside. The wife's like, yeah, let's save $10. I mean, we spent too much this weekend. Let's save $10. Let's walk a little bit. She's cool with it. I'm like, great. So the intention is saving a little bit of money. Now, what I did, knowing I was going to park kind of either on a street or just some random area, I took, we've got two vehicles. I took like my work vehicle, the one I go back and forth to work on. It's like a beater, you know, get me from A to B. So I took the beater. I said, hey, I don't want no one, you know, I don't want to tempt anyone. I'm not parking somewhere where it's going to be a guard. So I'd rather take the lesser of two cars if something happens or whatever, or, you know, even less of an entice for criminals. So I took the beater and I'm driving. I don't see anything. It's all stuck in traffic and whatnot. Then I see this spot. Okay, cool. It's free. He's like, yeah, you can just park here. There's a bunch of cars. I'm like, perfect. I'm about to save this money. Here's the cautionary tale. Obviously, it's a free lot filled with mud, just not a good spot. I'm driving. I get stuck in the mud. You know, I'm not moving. This guy had to help me from up the street. Now we're pushing the car. We're rocking it back and forth. And in my effort to save $10, I hit some type of weird snag. The car was like wedged between the mud and like some elevated random concrete. It's a free lot. This is what I get. My whole muffler, the whole thing completely falls off the car. And this is a cautionary tale. You try to save $10. You spent a lot over the weekend in an effort to save $10. Now I'm going to be out hundreds of bucks because the whole muffler is gone. It completely fell off. Now the kicker was I was, upset, frustrated. I couldn't even, a muffler is long. It's like the length almost of the car. I couldn't even put this thing in my car without rolling down 2 windows. And so I would have to park, leave my car pretty much open. I had no choice. I had to leave. I had to go home. And so I wound up missing a good portion of the game. Didn't go at all in the effort to save 10 measly dollars. I completely, pulled a bad move. It was a bad judgment call on my part. Next time, just, hey, man, spend the money. $10 isn't going to make or break you, but I did want to save some money. I want to save $10, and now I'm going to be out hundreds of bucks. And as a consequence, I did miss a few portions of the game. And what I did catch was a lot of radio and a lot on TV. But this season has been great. Didn't go to the last one, the home game, but, we went to the other 7. It was fun. Getting to know people in the area. Will I renew this year, upcoming? Probably not, to be honest with you. I enjoyed it. I also enjoyed being at home. This season, it was still a bit of a disappointment. My scheduling was really perfect this year. And usually I have obligations where I'm not free as much to attend that many home games. It all lined up this year. I don't think things are going to line up that way. But it was a bucket list thing for me, having season tickets. And so I was able to do that. And I'm very happy and proud to do it. The last game was a little bit shaky. Didn't go the way I wanted. In an effort to save a little money, I'm spending more. But hey, that's life, right? I'm a half glass full type of guy. I get frustrated like the next man. But, as you sit down and you think about it, sometimes we're fortunate enough to have the ability to do things such as fix your muffler. Sometimes we complain about things, but to have the ability to do certain things. Some people literally can't even get their car fixed. Some people don't have cars. Some people don't, I can get all philosophical. So I'm going to stop at this point. But I will say is it was frustrating, but it could be worse. And so, hey, next time I won't be so freaking cheap trying to save $10. I'll go ahead and park in the spot that I'm accustomed to. Real quick, the Pro Bowl, which means nothing, okay? I don't care about the Pro Bowl. I think the last time I watched like a full Pro Bowl, I was probably 12 years old. I thought it was cool. I don't even really watch bits and pieces of it. I may catch a little bit here and there. Bottom line is, doesn't matter. But, your peers and things, it's looked at. Ziggy Ansah making it cool. Calvin Johnson is kind of a bit of a reputation one, but that's fine. The snub goes to Mr. Darius Slay. After Josh Norman, and there's some decent guys, cornerbacks, defensive backs. After Josh Norman and a couple other guys, and some of them are in the AFC like Chris Harris, this guy's been one of the best cornerbacks in the league this year. And if you look at advanced metrics and things, he certainly deserved to go, but he did not. So I'm going to call that a snub, and we keep rolling. DeAndre Levy and Darius Slay will have an opportunity, I think, next year if Levy plays the way he did before the injury last year, and if Slay plays the way he does. You oftentimes don't get to the All-Star game. It's a Pro Bowl. I'm going to call it an All-Star because for any sport, usually the first year or two that you really deserve to go, you don't go yet because you're young. You got to earn it unless you're just like some rookie phenom that people love. But it's on the flip side. You usually go a year or two after you really deserve to be there. Kind of like Calvin this year. No disrespect to the man, but, he's not ultimately deserving to go this year. He's had a bit of a down year, although the stats are respectable. So it all evens up usually. You probably deserve to go a couple of times that you don't at the beginning, and toward the end, because of your reputation and your legacy, you get a chance to go when there were some guys behind you that have better stats and probably had better years. Let's get into the 3 questions before we wrap things up with the Chicago Bears. I want to call them Bulls almost there, but I gathered myself. The lovely Telly is not joining us today, but she will be back next week. So you'll be listening to me read off these questions. They are from Twitter. As always, I'm at Jerry Mallory NFL on Twitter. Feel free to follow me. Feel free. It's a little bit of a tongue twister, feel free to follow me. This one is from Chris Roberts at Chris Roberts DET. He asked the show, what do you think about Sean Payton as the next Lions coach? I mean, I like it. I'm hoping at some point, whether it's Sean Payton or John Harbaugh, one of these two guys are available. If I'm replacing Caldwell, who went 11-5 last year and has kind of turned things around, I do want to replace him with someone that has the experience. I'm not looking for the coordinator that's going to be upgraded, the hotshot assistant, although I do like Adam Gase. I mean, there's always exceptions to the rule. I would prefer, though, someone with that experience. And Sean Payton, John Harbaugh, I'm lumping them together. They've had struggling times this year. I would love if either one guy can. It looks like Sean Payton would probably more likely be the guy because Baltimore, this is their first year of really being this bad. But in any event, just to answer it, I would like it. I would like it a lot. Things would kind of fall into place. And he has the pedigree. Say what you want about him. His X's and O's are always top notch. He's made tons of gutsy decisions. They've panned out at the biggest stage. He's a Super Bowl winning coach. And it wasn't like, he had this and he had a phenomenal team, but it wasn't like he was a figurehead coach. You know what I mean? He was a guy where it was a formula, and he was just as much a part of that formula as the players. And you just can't plug in any old coach, and they would have had that success. He was key to what they did. Very good coach. Good question, Chris. I would love to have Sean Payton. I know there's some negative things about him. Some people think he's over the hill and past his years of success. I just think guys kind of wear out their welcome sometimes. Unless you're Bill Belichick and you're winning or going to the Super Bowl every 2 to 3 years, you wear out your welcome. A fresh start. He's still young, and I still believe he is a great mind in terms of head coaching. So next up is Matt Dairy. No, not that one. It's the other one. Matt Milk, Matt Cheese, Matt whatever else is considered ice cream. It's Matt DAIR on Twitter. He asked, Calvin can't be on the team with $24 million cap hit, ? I'm kind of starting to agree with that, if that was the question. But he also says, what team should he go to if he's gone? I'm such a Lions guy, and haven't had a ton of guys that have left, and I've continued to root for them. So in a way, I don't care too much. I would root for him, though. I might make the exception. There's a couple of things. I'm going to give you two choices. If he wants to do his home thing, he's from the Atlanta, Georgia area. There were rumors that was potentially where he wanted to go earlier in his career when we were struggling, and we signed him to that huge deal. And at that time, Atlanta was doing a lot better. So from the hometown standpoint, wants to go back home, I could see him doing that. If we're just placing him on a team that has a good chance of winning and it's young and can use a receiver, yada, yada, yada. I mean, he could really go to any contending team and would make a great impact, New England, even Green Bay. I would hate it, though. Please, Calvin, if you're not here, please do not. We don't want to see you twice a year, especially wearing green and yellow. They do have a lot of receivers, though, so that wouldn't make a ton of sense. But the team I'm going with is the Carolina Panthers. I mean, it all adds up. Great team, great defense. The offense is really good. Anytime you got guys like Ted Ginn Jr. revitalizing his career because Cam Newton has played so well and the running game has played so well, just imagine that team with Calvin Johnson, 6'5", 230 plus, Kelvin Benjamin, who had a really good rookie year, returning from the ACL, and Devin Funchess, who's also a big man, 6'4". That's scary, okay? It's arguably the best team in the league already. It's still south. It's a little bit closer to his home. And just from a statistical standpoint, a logistical standpoint, however you want to word it, it makes a lot of sense. So I'm just going to pick a team. I send him to Carolina, and that will probably give him a good chance at contending for the Super Bowl. Good question. The last one is Brian Ballard, Goku Pantera 101. He says, what do you think they will do with these coaches? Like Austin and Cooter, but is that enough to deal with Caldwell? No, I don't think it's enough to deal with Caldwell. I'm liking as well what Austin and what Cooter has done. If you like them that much, you interview Austin. Perhaps Austin is your new head coach. If you like them that much, maybe you're looking at some head coaching candidates and you kind of letting them know, hey, you can't force I mean, technically you can. You don't really want to force a coordinator on anyone, but you can kind of gauge the willingness of them to work with those guys. There's a lot of variables to that. Ultimately, I will answer by saying no. I don't think that much about them to where I'd be willing to keep Caldwell. I just hope that some type of way they do stay. And there's a few connections that can be made to where they would. If John Harbaugh came in and, Terrell Austin doesn't get a head coaching gig, which I think he's going to get this year anyway. So no matter what, if Caldwell's the coach or whoever, I think Terrell Austin will be gone. However, there are some connections. John Harbaugh, you bring him in, he has a history with one Terrell Austin, so he could potentially stay. Adam Gase has a history with Jim Bob Cooter. So conceivably, we could keep one of them, maybe both of them, even if we lose Caldwell. But if it came down to keep Caldwell as a means of keeping these guys or losing them because you fired Caldwell, I'm going to say sorry. I like the coordinators, but not enough to keep Mr. Jim Caldwell. So good questions, guys. Again, it's Jerry Mallory, NFL, JERRY NFL, and that's the @ for the Twitter. So let's wrap this up talking a little bit of Chicago Bears, two teams that are both 6-9. What's at stake is for one, a draft spot. Whoever wins this game will have a better record, and they will have the worst draft spot, at least by one pick, but it could fluctuate to 2 or 3 picks. I think they're both going for blood. They're both trying to win the game, okay? They don't like each other. It's an NFC North foe. So, Chicago Bears, overall on offense this year, they're 19th. They are decent running the ball. They're 12th. And in terms of passing, they're only 23rd. Now, defensively, they're 16th. They're 27th against the run. And here's where they're shining. This is where they've made the 180. It's the secondary. They are 4th in pass defense. And this is why this game to me is going to be interesting, because Stafford's played really well, but it's been against mediocre to bad defenses, specifically passing defenses. So you got You've got Soldier Field. It's, into the new year, early January. It could be snowing. You've got one of the best pass defenses in the league. I think we'll get a really good glimpse of saying, hey, you know what? Jim Bob and the offensive line and Stafford, they figure this thing out if they look good, in my opinion, passing the ball against Chicago. If they struggle, I think the narrative of succeeding against weaker competition is that much stronger. So from that standpoint, if anything else, I'm really looking forward to seeing what this team is going to be able to do against a really good pass defense. Now, in terms of running the ball, this is where they've shined. And we've struggled, even early in this San Francisco game. Todd Gurley, Adrian Peterson, they're running this two-headed monster. I think Forte, this is going to be his last game in Chicago. I think he's going to be pumped for it because they've got Jeremy Langford. Even this last game, Langford got 18 carries, Forte got 11. I think they feel comfortable that Langford's going to be the guy. They've done this before, okay? They've had successful running backs. They draft one. He looks good enough. They're not going to repay that guy. This is what Matt Forte did to one Thomas Jones. Thomas Jones was a really good running back for them, over 1,000 yards, getting things done, but they drafted Matt Forte. And Matt Forte looked good enough. They were comfortable enough to where they said, Thomas, you got to go, man. We've got someone already that's going to replace you. I think we see this happening right now with Jeremy Langford, because Forte is going to get one last deal. Someone's going to pay him decent money. He's still a really good running back. And so I think he'll be playing motivated because this could potentially be his last game. And I'm really looking forward to seeing, again, what Matt Stafford can do against a good pass defense. It's hard to pick this one, man. I mean, I'm going to roll with it. I think what will happen is their pass defense is going to stifle Stafford a little bit. But overall, I'm looking forward to our defense having enough effort to contain the Bears. And we eke this one out, final score of 20-17. One more week, guys. One more week and the season is over. But you know what? The podcast is far from over. Some will say it's just beginning. The draft, the GM, it's going to be a lot going down. I mean, the way Martha Ford kind of operates, I could be talking about more than just the Bears versus Chicago. The Bears versus the Lions, excuse me. I could be talking about some firings and some hirings. She's acted decisively a time or two. You know, there could be some cleaning of boxes and clearing of houses after the Chicago game. Either way, we know change is on the horizon. It's exciting, but guess what? Let's enjoy this last game. Remember, we hate Chicago. We don't care about the draft pick. We wanted to beat a division foe. We want to have a strong showing. And so we're going to watch this game. We're going to celebrate. It's been a rough year, but we're going to have fun with it. I want to thank each and every one of you for listening, as you always been. DetroitSportsPodcast.com, iTunes for iPhone, Podbay for Android. I'll be back next Monday talking about the season finale, Chicago versus Detroit at Soldier Field. Until then, this has been Jerry Mallory for the Hindsight 20 podcast.